Legal terminology can make or break a contract. One particularly powerful, yet often misunderstood term is notwithstanding. This single word can override entire sections of a legal document, creating exceptions and establishing hierarchies between clauses. In legal contexts, notwithstanding means despite, in spite of, or even if. When a clause begins with this term, it signals that the provision will apply regardless of anything contradictory elsewhere in the document. It essentially creates a trump card that overrides conflicting terms. For example, if a contract states, "Notwithstanding anything to the contrary in this agreement, Party A may terminate with 30 days' notice," this means Party A can terminate with 30 days' notice even if other sections specify different termination periods. The power of notwithstanding comes with significant advantages. It allows for broad rules with specific exceptions without having to modify multiple provisions. When drafters know exactly which provisions need to be subordinated, especially if there are many, using notwithstanding can be more efficient than listing each one individually. This term is particularly useful during ongoing negotiations, when additional provisions might need to be subordinated later. Rather than renegotiating specific clauses, a well-placed notwithstanding clause can maintain the priority of key terms throughout the process. However, this powerful term comes with notable drawbacks. Many readers, even those familiar with contracts, may not fully grasp that provisions following notwithstanding create exceptions to general rules. This misunderstanding can lead to breaches of contract when parties fail to recognize the hierarchy established. The term can also subordinate rules that aren't easily identified, especially in lengthy documents. This creates ambiguity about exactly which provisions are being overridden. When paired with phrases like the foregoing, which refers to previous content, the scope becomes even more unclear. Common pitfalls include ambiguity of reference, unintentional overriding of provisions, confusing placement within sentences, overuse throughout a document, and creating contradictions with other terms. These issues can undermine the very clarity the term is meant to establish. Notwithstanding is often confused with another common legal phrase, subject to. While they serve similar functions in establishing hierarchies between clauses, they work from opposite directions. Notwithstanding appears in the prevailing clause, looking back to a main rule it's overriding. Subject to appears in the subordinate clause, looking ahead to an exception. Courts generally interpret notwithstanding clauses as establishing supremacy over other provisions. However, judges typically strive to harmonize contract provisions when possible, rather than allowing one clause to completely nullify another. If the overriding intent isn't explicit, courts may favor interpretations that preserve both clauses. The contra proferentem rule means ambiguities are often interpreted against the drafter, especially in consumer contracts. This makes clarity in drafting paramount to avoid costly litigation and misinterpretation. To use notwithstanding effectively, drafters should specify the exact reference point rather than using vague phrases like notwithstanding anything. For example, notwithstanding Section 5.4 provides much greater clarity than a blanket override. Placement matters too. The term works best at the beginning of a clause, immediately signaling its overriding intent. Drafters should also avoid circular references where provisions refer back to each other in conflicting ways. Alternative phrasing can sometimes improve clarity. Instead of defaulting to notwithstanding, consider phrases like except as provided in Section X or to the extent not inconsistent with. These alternatives can be more comprehensible to non-legal readers while maintaining enforceability. Understanding the proper use of notwithstanding is essential for both drafting and interpreting legal documents. When used with precision, it creates clear hierarchies and exceptions. When used carelessly, it introduces ambiguity and potential disputes. The key is to use this powerful term deliberately, with specific references and only when legal precedence between clauses is required.